Heute soll es nur 30 Grad werden, morgen soll es 34 Grad werden.
Dann können wir diese Fans ansetzen.
Dankeschön. Also die sind schon, also Bernhard und ich und Anna und also die sind schon, ja.
Aber alle, die zur Wahl stehen, so können wieder gewählt werden.
Wer nicht, ja, er kann erst der Einzige, der nicht wieder gewählt wird. Von allen ist Heino der Einzige, der raus muss. Leider, sorry. Ja, ja, die anderen sind alle, stehen alle zur Wiederwahl.
So practice to swim in those bottles. Yeah, go, but ring it hard, not too slow. Break
I
it.
was criticized for not doing the job well, so you're doing it much better. Ist sie Lehrer oder war sie Lehrer?
Ich denke, sie ist nicht Lehrerin.
Martin? Martin? Pastor Dear Christine has mislaid his black Parker pen somewhere, so if anyone sees a black Parker pen, there we are, Dirk. You must have put it into Udo's pocket. We will now go on to the next part. The next part is theological education in Stellenbosch, and I'll ask Heino to introduce Felix.
Thank you, Mr. President. I welcome Mr. Pastor Felix Mailanje, and I think he'll give us all the right answers on where we should get our pastors. You'll find out shortly. He's got his answer in his CV. Pastor Felix Mailan was born and raised on the Berliner Mission Farm in Pniel in the Northern Cape, active in the church from the word go. His parents told him that he would sing the liturgy with the pastor during divine service before he could say any other words. So yeah, that's a good idea, good start. But perhaps this was wishful thinking of the conservative variety, because it was made clear to him from his toddler years by co-workers of the mission station that he was to become a pastor. He completed his schooling in Kimberley, went to Pietermaritzburg, and was trained to be a pastor. Studying theology at the University Pietermaritzburg and at the university with some excellent teachers, and learning the ropes of the ministry from Father Herbert Kraus. Then he worked as a pastor in various congregations of the Cape Church, Philippi, Belleville, Port Elizabeth, and Stellenbosch from 1991 to 2023. A couple of years ago, he was asked by the UELSA Church Council to accompany the theology students now studying for the ministry at the University of Stellenbosch to be their mentor and tutor, preparing them for 2 church exams, through which they could be qualified to be ordained in a member church of UELSA. He did this part-time and a number of years, and since June 2023, he's doing this full-time as Director of Studies of the UELSA. It is a challenging but very fulfilling work. He is grateful for the opportunity of working in an academic environment, but clearly focused on how academic excellence and ministerial competence can be combined in people who are called to serve up the gospel for godlessness. It is to proclaim God's unconditional acceptance to acceptable people in the world, preaching in the path a new creation, baptism, at the table of the Lord, Holy Communion, and the prayer liturgy with and for the world. Thank you, Pastor Mailan.
Hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join you at this Hohe SYNOD. Maybe before I start, I need to explain one thing. The damage done to me was done because I had a fight with our washing line. The washing wasn't getting dry fast enough, and I had to run out to get the washing, and the washing line won. So that's the mark on my head. I wasn't fighting with any other gangsters from Cape Town. And the other thing is my screensaver just started. I don't know if you noticed the picture. That was my wife, and it is her birthday today. So I just wanted to tell you that.
The same goes for my wife. It's also my wife's birthday today.
Okay. So I'm very glad that you had some cake here. Then I don't miss out on all the birthday cakes at home. Yeah. Welcome to the place where the questions are more important than the answers. This is what I say to students that come to Stellenbosch to study theology. And I truly believe that if you come across a human being that claims to have all the answers, you should be very, very careful. Because usually that kind of a person will give you their answers and not allow you to ask questions. And I think that's not what we need to do. We need to be able to answer questions, and we need to learn to say, to figure out questions. That's our task as people who want to lead congregations, who want to be pastors in congregations, because you're going to be dealing with people that have questions. And we need to help them to really understand their questions, not necessarily just wipe their questions under the table or under the carpet by giving them some pat answers that we learned somewhere along the line. To the Faculty of Theology, this is the building in Stellenbosch that houses the Faculty of Theology of the University of Stellenbosch. A quick word about this building. It used to be the old Droste building of Stellenbosch. The NG Kerk bought it sometime, and obviously, as you know the history a little bit, it was the place where theology was developed in a very conservative mode for many years. And then when things changed in South Africa in 1994, the faculty made a very decided effort and decision to become an ecumenical faculty. So the building is still owned by the Dutch Reformed Church, but it is rented out to the theology faculty, which is a faculty of the university, rented out to the faculty for R1 a year. And the NG Kerk is still willing to do the maintenance and to look after the building, which I think is a wonderful ministry to the faculty. The faculty has official partners that I want to mention right away so that we realize that it is truly an ecumenical faculty. It has students from a wide spectrum of denominations worldwide. We have 6 official church partners, the Dutch Reformed Church, of course, the Uniting Reformed Church in Southern Africa, URCSA, and I think I maybe need to explain who they are. So before, there were 2 NG Kerk subsections. The one was called the Descending Kerk, NG Sending Kerk, which was for the colored people, as they were called at the time. And then there was the NG Kerk in Afrika, which was for black South Africans, a Dutch Reformed Church. And in the process of finding a new way forward, these 2 churches actually merged and became what is now called the Verenigende Gereformeerde Kerk, the Uniting Reformed Church in Southern Africa. They used to have their theological training at the University of the Western Cape, UWC, but when that department was closed down because it was no longer a theology faculty, but a department of religious studies, they also joined Stellenbosch University. For instance, Professor Dirkie Smit, a rather famous Dutch Reformed theologian from the Sendingkerk, largely responsible for writing the Belhar Belydenis, also moved to Stellenbosch, and their church decided to also come to Stellenbosch to train their theologians there. And then we have the Uniting Presbyterian Church in Southern Africa, who is an official partner. The Anglican Church is a partner. Die Volkskerk van Afrika is a partner. And then also now the most recent partner that joined the faculty officially is UELCSA, United Evangelical Lutheran Church in Southern Africa. And for all these churches, they have a special agreement with the faculty that they will be training ministers. And there are set contracts with all these partner churches and ongoing negotiations about the needs these churches have for their ministers. So the ministry students undergo parallel ministry formation by their churches, and that's where my post comes in. So as they do their academic training, they are accompanied by their churches, and so I have more than two colleagues from the other partner churches that are also appointed at faculty to accompany their students. And with the Dutch Reformed Church and the URCSA, the Uniting Reformed Church, we have put together a program called the Seminary Program. And in the Seminary Program, we do what is called spiritual formation, to use a sort of a blanket term for a whole lot of things, so that these theology students don't only learn academic theology, but also learn how that looks like in practice in the congregation, but also in terms of prayer life, spiritual disciplines, and the various things we need to know as we lead congregations. So much for that. I want to then also just explain the faculty itself. We have 3 large departments. There are lots of subjects. The Bachelor of Divinity degree is one of the degrees at the faculty with the most credits that you have to get through when you want to finish the degree. But the 3 large discipline groups, as they are called at the faculty, are Old and New Testament studies. Then we have systematic theology and ecclesiology. And then we have the Department of Practical Theology and Missiology. So that's how the faculty is structured, that you have these 3 big discipline groups. Okay, then I want to just say something. The big question was, how do you get people that want to become pastors? And I would want to caution by saying, let's not only talk about a calling when it's the calling to the ministry in the church. In our Lutheran understanding, calling or vocation is actually anything that God calls you to do. So if you are a street sweeper, Luther said, do it properly because God has called you to do it. Yeah? We must be careful not to sort of put the pastor work on a sort of a higher level somewhere and say, now that's the real calling. Because then, of course, you get these jokes, and we have those constantly at university. If you don't sleep with your window open, you might not hear the call. Calling, vocation, I believe, is something that you need to really think about hard in whichever direction you want to go into. Perhaps putting it like this, the substance, the material, the work that you feel makes you happy to do, where you would actually even go and do it without being paid for it. Where that meets a clear need in your community, where those two come together, that will be your calling. So if you're really happy teaching mathematics, and you realize there are no math teachers in the schools, maybe God is calling you to do that. If you feel this is really great stuff to proclaim the gospel of God's unconditional grace for unacceptable people, and that really makes you happy, and you see lots of people feeling unaccepted and being excluded from their communities, being driven out of their communities for whatever reason, then maybe that's what God's calling you to do. But let's not think only of calling when we think about ministries. And then the last thing about that I'd like to say, I don't have all the answers, how do we get pastors? But I think one of the most important aspects of it is that the experience that young people have with the present pastors, the role models, to use an old term, I think are very important. If they see other people really being happy in the ministry, and not only happy in the sort of superficial sense, but in the deep sense, I think they might also come to realize, oh, this is something that could really be something for me. There Barbara is again. So that's what I would like to say about that. Maybe the theology students can also mention something there. I want to introduce them to you. You've already met them. So it's Pierre Hanekom, Rutendo Gora, and Tristan Kruger. And there is one of the evidences of the faculty being a really internationally known faculty. Carolina is from Norway. She's a Lutheran student studying in Norway, but she is now doing some studies in Stellenbosch at the faculty there. And this is true for the faculty as a whole. We have a huge number of international students coming to Stellenbosch, also from the whole of Africa, from Ethiopia, from Tanzania, from all over the place, coming to study, often in postgraduate courses, studying theology there. And the same is true for lecturers. So we have, I always laugh at the term, they're called extraordinary professors. And they are extraordinary, in some cases more than others. Of course, it's just extraordinary, so they're not the ordinary professors, they're the extraordinary ones. And they come from all over the world as well. Among others, the bishops of the leading bishops of the EKD in the past were both Bishop Wolfgang Huber and Bishop Bedford Strom. They are both extraordinary, officially extraordinary professors at the Faculty of Theology in Stellenbosch. And a whole lot of other theologians are there as well. A quick word about what the course entails. So for the pastors, for the people that want to become pastors in our churches, we want them to do a Bachelor of Divinity. Yeah. And then we actually ask them to do a Master's of Divinity. So 4 years degree, it's an equivalent of an honors degree academically. And then a 5th year, a Master's, a structured Master's, at the end of which they then receive their Master's degree and then enroll for what is called the first theological exam by the church. And Tristan is on his way, and Pierre is on his way to do that exam early next year. So you can see them shaking in their boots. But yeah, so that's where you then become once you've passed that exam, you become a vicar, an intern in the Lutheran Church, in one of our member churches. Another 2 years of practical work and training. Another theological exam called the second theological exam, after which you then can be ordained, and you can be placed in a congregation for a time of 1 to 4 years as pastor collaborator, which sounds terrible in the old languages. You shouldn't be a collaborator, right? But in this case, you are collaborating with another pastor under another pastor's supervision to just learn the ropes even more and give the time and the congregation the time to really figure out whether you are okay in this vocation that you are following. So that's as far as I want to go, and then I just want to show you a couple of pictures, if I may. And I now want them to come forward and just maybe say a couple of words of what does it mean to them to study theology in Stellenbosch. So at the faculty, as I say, there are other churches involved, and these are the two that are there most regularly. The one you might recognize, and the other one is my Anglican colleague. His title is canon. So in the Anglican Church, you don't fire the canon, you appoint the canon, and that is his work. He's the Anglican chaplain at the university. He also teaches a course which is called Anglican Studies, and I am busy working on also getting Lutheran Studies as a course that then our Lutheran students, but also other students, can do as an elective, one of the courses they can choose to do if they are interested in that course. Our students will, of course, be expected to do it. Yeah. So that's inside the building from that front entrance that you saw just now. Now, the ULXA, when they appointed me full-time, had to buy a house for my position, not for me. And this is the house with the white dog and the angel. So this is just a shot or two of that house. There was not much of a garden there when we got there, and Barbara and I are trying to make it look a bit prettier than it was. It's been renovated. This is the view from the inside of that window. There's a beautiful park on the opposite side there. And it's a double-story house with a balcony on each side. It's right next to the R44. So I have a solution to, you know what a tinnitus is? This little Christmas beetle in your ear. Well, I've got the perfect solution. Go and sleep next to a road like that. You won't hear the tinnitus anymore. Yeah, just some views. That's the view from the top balcony there. I have my morning coffee there sometimes. This is the other side. You can see the R44 going past there. Especially in the mornings and evenings when the trucks come into Stellenbosch and use their exhaust brakes, the whole house shakes, which is also fun. You feel, I call it the pulse of life in Stellenbosch. This is now the inside when it was still being prepared. One of the reasons why they bought such a rather huge house is because they want to house the library, theological library. We have my theological books. Another colleague brought her books. And I have now the library of Klaus Nürnberger there, and we are also still waiting for the books from the Peter Maritzburg library. So we are going to have a really big library in that room, and there's quite a lot of space to sit and study there, and I want to also work with the students there. That's the other side of the room with a little bit more furniture already in it, and this is the outside at the back. Our dog. This is my study where I try and do my preparations. There you can see more books in one of the shelves. There are lots and lots of shelves. Then I want to just quickly say the churches that prepare students for the ministry take each year group, the Bachelor of Divinity 1, 2, 3, 4, and MDiv, to a place called the Andrew Murray Center for Spirituality. This is situated in Wellington. It's the old college that Andrew Murray built to train evangelists to go into Africa. So from this place, evangelists were sent on donkeys, and the furthest they reached was Ethiopia. And very recently, we had a group of Ethiopian pastors coming to Wellington to say, we want to see where those evangelists who started our churches in Ethiopia came from. And they came and fell on their knees here and prayed a thanks prayer for the work that was started from this place. And there is, just next to this big building, there is a little forest. It is called the Donkey Bos, because the students, the evangelist students that were studying there, were sent into the donkey bos to pray and ask God, where do you want this donkey to go? And it's still called the donkey bos, which I think is really nice. And they've all been to the Center of Spirituality. What we do there over a weekend is a retreat. We teach them spiritual disciplines, prayer, meditations, times of silence. There's a labyrinth that we use extensively to think through things and so on. So it's really a pretty place. There's a chapel. It used to be the stable, and they built the inside of this chapel. The furniture there is made from the wood that the stables were originally built from. That's the inside of that chapel, with a beautiful window in the front, behind the altar. You can see it there. It's a really lovely place to be, and it's a place of silence, of meditation, and of retreat. This is back to the house that I'm living in now, and we do have some peace in the Western Cape. As you can see, the rainbow is there. Another picture from there. This is now the little office I have at the faculty. As one of the partner churches representatives at the faculty, they've actually given me a little room where I can then also sit and talk to the individual students. This is incidentally what I believe is my main task, apart from teaching them certain subjects and helping them understand, for instance, the Lutheran confessional writings and the basic systematic theology of the Lutheran Church. What I do is I sit and give the opportunity for them to talk to me. I want to listen to them. As you can imagine, studying theology on an academic level sometimes messes with your faith. And you need to have someone to grapple with you on that. And this is one of the places where I can now do that at the faculty. I used to use the office at the Lutheran congregation in Stellenbosch. Then we also go for walks along the Stellenbosch Berg, the Bergpad as it is called. And this is just silly picture. We had at the back of the house, there was just concrete and a swimming pool that was no longer working. And we said we need a bit of a garden. So we ordered 10 cubic meters of soil, garden soil, and then Barbara and I put it into the back. And we made a whole flower bed, and we're going to be planting trees and things there. There's another picture from the inside, and now we come to some of the other students. Some of you will recognize Bernard Schiele, and the friend that he's got in his arm there is Jean-Ray Rhodes. He is an ELXA student studying at Stellenbosch. And the agreement with the faculty was that I would look after any Lutheran students that come to Stellenbosch. Even though the ELXA is not officially sending their theology students to Stellenbosch, if they come, we look after them. They are part of the the group, they join in the seminars that I offer, and Genre is, as you can see, in on the deal in the kitchen of the Lutheran congregation. I wanted to speak about that. The student ministry of the Lutheran congregation looks like this. So what they do is they prepare a meal every Wednesday. The student fellowship, and now this is not only theology students, they're all students that come from Lutheran backgrounds or interested in meeting with Lutherans are invited, and on a Wednesday night they prepare a meal together in the kitchen of the Lutheran church. The congregation's council committee has said, "You're welcome, this is your space." They've even given the password out for the Wi-Fi. It is uncapped, so the students, I think, make ample use of that, because they then also have a space to study, which is not, the church is on the campus, so they're quite close by. There you can see they are working on making the meal in the kitchen, and it's often hot dogs and tomato and onion. And this is back in Wellington, a group that is doing a preparation for meditation by making, what are those things called? Collages. Very interesting concept. You give them a magazine and tell them you must only use it upside down, and then cut out bits and pieces that you want to make a collage out of, just to think differently. There you can see a couple of the students. The bearded man in the middle at the back is Frederik Maré. He was the Dutch Reformed pastor that was responsible for the students. He's just retired now, and a new pastor has taken over his job. Here you can see this is Bernard Schieler's year group as they are meeting at Wellington. Back in the kitchen, we often get international students that are just joining in. So Carolina is not the only one from Norway. There are I think two others at the moment, or one other, and then we also often have people from Sweden and from Germany joining in as well. And there you can see Pia having some food, and Tristan as well. Then they go for walks up on the mountain together as year groups. And this is the Masters of Divinity group before they left on what is called the ecumenical tour. This year we went up on along the west coast and visited various congregations and also projects that are launched by different NGOs and so on. So this was just before we left for that tour. Tristan and Pia were on the tour, and Carolina as well. And you can ask them about that. I think it was a wonderful experience. I'll report one incident on that tomorrow when I do my talk. That's up on the Stellenbosch Bergpad, a view of the sunrise. And there we go, 2 students that have completed their Bachelor of Divinity. This is Tristan and Hans Christoph Lange. Some of you may know him as well. And the 2 of them got their degree in Bachelor of Divinity. And that's it. That's what I have to offer. Perhaps I can now ask the 4 of them to come forward and just a sentence or 2 about what it is like to study theology in Stellenbosch.
Yeah, so maybe I can just add that it has been enjoyable for me, at least. You don't actually arrive there on your own. You don't need to face all the challenges on your own. You've actually got a student group who's there with you. There is always someone in the church there. And of course, you have a really fantastic mentor who always listens to you and gives really good comfort and pieces of advice. And yeah, I don't know what the others. I also recently, we were asked to do a video for the different congregations about our theology studies, and I actually responded quite spontaneously to the videos she asked me, the person who made the video, and I said, well, theology has actually been really enjoyable for me because it really broadens your horizons. You don't only learn, about Bible studies or about the Bible. You actually learn about how we Christians function in a certain context, how modernity has influenced Christianity. All of these really interesting things, and it allows you to, I think, look at the world in a very different perspective, and it can be exciting and fun.
Well, yeah, I arrived at Stellenbosch in July, so I've only been this semester, but I was very lucky to join a very good group, and I've really enjoyed my stay here, about the discussions in class and getting different perspective. I'm from Norway, which is mostly Lutheran. We don't get that much Reformed people, so also hearing different perspective and learning much more. And about the discussion and seeing how theology studies is in different countries. And I had a very, very good class and nice professors, and also the ecumenical tour was fun. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
Hi everyone. For me, my experience studying theology was realizing how different I was in the context, not only because I was black, but actually because I was black. So, and also like understanding how we exist and how Christianity comes in different forms. And for me personally, it was a very difficult time mentally. I went through the most. And this process, I didn't expect, as much as people say like it messes up with your faith and stuff, I didn't expect it to mess it up the way it messed it up. And I don't mean to like repel someone from doing it, but the process is so necessary. And I think having people around to guide you in that process is so important, because during my theological journey, there were people around me who left because they don't have like certain support systems, and how the breaking of the faith really helps it build, because for me, it was so liberating when I realized like, oh, so it's just breaking off the fact that you're being very religious, or you've put on so much pressure on yourself as a Christian and all this, and not fully understanding the grace that is in Jesus Christ. And not saying that I didn't learn that while growing up, but it was more in depth, more watered. And I'm very grateful for all the experiences that I have experienced in theology, all the different ideas that I have been exposed to. And I would definitely like, if you do want to go into this journey, make sure you do have a support group, and you will have one. Thank you.
Okay, so I only arrived in Stellenbosch in January this year, so I did my bachelor's at a different faculty. And I will summarize my experience with a few pros and a few cons. So pros, Stellenbosch is one of the most beautiful towns in our already very beautiful country. It is an immense privilege to be able to study alongside fellow Lutherans and to approach the big questions of life and death and meaning and faith and doubt in a life lived together. I don't think there's been anything throughout all of my years of studying theology, I'm not that old, but that has contributed so much as to be able to sit alongside your fellow brothers and sisters and to wrestle alongside them with a very good mentor to accompany you along the way. Challenges, it is challenging, I would say, to get your theological formation at a faculty which is not Lutheran, but on the other hand, you also get a lot of exposure to other traditions that enrich you and challenge you. It is a great advantage to be able to sit in class and to know that you don't have to agree with everything because they're not in the same camp. And yes, all in all, I've had a very pleasant experience. I'm going to end with a very big two pros. Stellenbosch is one of the towns in the country where the best beer and wine is made in abundance. And then perhaps just finally, I would also like to mention that on the note of theological education and the path towards the ministry, I never did consider becoming a pastor, and I know all pastors have their stories about feeling like Jonah, etc. But to my mind, I didn't grow up in the Lutheran church, so I can't critique the confirmation and the formation of our church. but I presume it wouldn't be too much different from the church in which I did grow up. Never along my path was I confronted with the question of whether you might be called to serve God in the specific role of minister of word and sacrament. And I also, as I think many other young people, grew up with a lot of misconceptions about the holy pastor and what he does, and I never could see myself fulfilling that role. So I did come to the answering of the call by a difficult route, but I don't think it needs to be that way, and perhaps the church can consider more closely accompanying young people when it comes to discerning their vocation. Yes, perhaps the role of the pastor should also get a voice at the table.
I just also want to say to them, it is an immense privilege for me to be allowed to work with them and to listen to them. It's also fun, but it's also lovely to just realize that these are the people that I can see how they grow and become the spiritual leaders of the church, of our churches. Just a word about the ecumenical faculty. I view it like this, that it's like a symphony orchestra. So you have the various different church partners working together, just like you have the different instruments in an orchestra playing together. And if you want to have a proper symphony, all the instruments must play their own parts, and they must know their own part well. It would certainly not sound good if all the trombones suddenly decided, we like the violin part better, we're going to play that. It doesn't make sense, and it would also not be good for the churches if we would try to just find one melody for all of us to play, be it the Lutheran one, because it's the right one, or any of the other ones. That won't make for the richness of the Christian tradition, and we need to discover that. That doesn't mean that ecumenical theology has to be a lowest common denominator theology. It's precisely because of the differences that we can enrich each other with that it is such a good venture to do it at an ecumenical theology faculty. Yes, I believe the question that we've asked, how do we encourage more people to become pastors, to be willing to go on this journey, has to be answered in various ways. So the one, of course, is to speak to the theology students and the interns in our church, ask them what it's like. But then also remember what all the various options are. So the faculty is working hard on trying to find ways to accommodate people that have already studied something else and want to, as a second career, become pastors. And there are various courses that we are developing there, the postgraduate diploma in ministry, postgraduate diploma in theology, and so on, and it's sometimes also part-time. So there are various options. So don't let yourself be daunted by this thought, oh, I have to actually take 5 years out of my life to go and study full-time in Stellenbosch. That, of course, would be lekker if you can do it, but there are other ways of doing it as well. So don't let that take you off the thought of maybe God is calling me to be part of that. Literature for that, I think one of the beautiful publications that has been shown a couple of times. This is, I really think, and you've seen it, Rutendo has held it up and others as well. Please read it. If you focus on Stellenbosch, read the ones that are written by the Stellenbosch study students. Hans-Christoph Lange was one of the editors and also wrote an essay in there. I think it's a very good place to start if you want to talk to people about the ministry. It's really good to see that. Yeah, thank you very much. If there are any questions, otherwise I can sit down again.
Yes, thank you. I have a question to the students. I mean, in the context of our topic or theme, Hope Live It, and the hopelessness that was shared at the table groups, GBV, unemployment, poverty, those things that we experience. In your studies, do you have the feeling that these things are addressed? How, as pastors, to deal with those things? Do you get some tools? Or are you just thrown into the cold water when you're done?
I can say we never ignore the context, definitely, and they definitely raise those issues. We also have Thursdays in Black, and on our ecumenical tour, we went to different churches in the Western Cape area. We went to, for example, Citrusdal, where we saw how they started a development project that actually was very successful. I can also say I don't think the theology that we learned there was in any way contextual. Yeah, it did address these issues. And maybe I can also just say you actually have you often have personal relationships with the lecturers, and it's real, if I can put it like that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Mark Rover.
Could you just stand up already in the queue?
Felix, I was wondering, JP alluded to this when he spoke about theological formation in a faculty which is not aligned, which is ecumenical in nature. Could you describe the balance? I presume you're trying to strike a balance between ecumenical work and educating students, in this case specifically in the Lutheran theology, because they are hopefully to be pastors in UELXA congregations. I'm sensing a lot of good ecumenical work. Could you possibly highlight one or two elements where their education is specifically aimed towards Lutheran service?
I think I mentioned a lot of that in the written report. Among other things, I offer seminars where I sit them down and take them through the Lutheran confessions. I, work through the catechism, for instance, and we have a lot of conversations. I tend to be more conversational kind of person. I don't do lecturing for an hour and then they have to go home and digest that. We try and work on Lutheran theology, very specifically then Lutheran theology, using the Augsburg Confession as one of my base documents, and then of course also Lutheran hermeneutics and how we read the Bible. Then we also do a lot of practical work. They are involved in the Lutheran congregations, divine services. They've all had a chance to preach or to do part of the services, the liturgical part of the services, the prayers. So yes, they get quite a lot of exposure in specifically Lutheran theology, and I mean that's my specific aim then, of course. Also at the faculty, where I'm busy developing modules that will then specifically be offered as under the heading Lutheran studies, like they have Anglican studies. I do then Lutheran studies. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. If there are any other questions, please stand in the queue there so we can. It goes quicker.
I just want to inquire or just ask, you only have the exit point of an NQF7 and an NQF8 and 9 or 10, where you get your PhDs, your bachelors and your diplomas. Have you ever considered having certificate courses where we could have lay pastors attend for about 6 to 9 months or even 12 months, and then that also be regarded as an exit point, and later in life or in time, they want to add on to that particular qualification that it further into a degree. Have you ever thought about this? I know this is tampering a little bit with the curriculum, but have you ever thought about that?
The curriculum at the faculty is actually quite diverse. So there are all sorts of different courses that are offered, also certificate courses and diploma courses. We developing those, of course, in conjunction with other churches, because it would not be financially viable to just do it for Lutheran students. So we are, but there is, of course, also from the various other churches, there are courses that we are developing together. For instance, there's an organization called Ecclesia, and there's Communitas. Both of them originate, I think, in the Dutch Reformed Church for continuous training for the pastors in their churches, but they've also opened their doors and people can come and do there. There's a preacher's course that is offered there. There are courses for people that want to do youth work. There's, of course, you can also actually do a Bachelor of Theology in youth work specifically. But yes, there are certificates available as well. Yeah. If you want to go online, the Stellenbosch University, the Faculty of Theology, they have their whole all the different courses. There is a program there that you can go where it's actually quite detailed, the subjects that you are then going to take if you do this or that or the next course. Yeah.
Bernd?
Bernd Klingenberg. Yeah, I think it's great that we now have someone permanent there, and this mentorship I think is quite important for the young students. And I read in your section under regular conversations, you also alluded to it in your presentation, and Rutenda also mentioned. You said, yes, studying theology can bring about agonizing afflictions, in brackets, Anfechtungen, about one's childhood faith. Are there some examples, or what are these kinds of Anfechtungen?
This is going to take us into a big discussion now, but I think it's important that we just mention that. I think we must admit that what we believe as young children, and what then comes about when you study theology on an academic level, there is just there are some discrepancies. I mean, if you just, for instance, notice as you read the first 2 chapters of Genesis that there are 2 different creation stories in the Bible. And you can't just put them together and say they are historically and biologically textbook reports of what actually happened at creation. And it's not even that you were ever told that you have to believe in a 7-day creation. I don't even think you are taught that in Kindergottesdienst. And yet, I think it just happens because the story is just told. And then you realize, hang on, these texts were written in a specific context, in the Babylonian exile, for instance, and they were grappling with the Babylonian religion and their creation stories that are different. And just as one example, for instance, quite a couple of examples that you could look at. So the academic study of theology makes you realize that you can go deeper into a text than just remain on the surface and read it like you would read I think you wouldn't even read a newspaper article in that way, where you think this is exactly how things happened. It is always written from a perspective, and you always need to interpret what you are reading. And the same goes for biblical texts. And it's the interpretation and learning how to do that in a historical but critically and theologically responsible way is what brings with it a lot of questions that you have to grapple with.
Thank you. Manfred, the last question, please.
Yeah, it's actually, for me, it's an amazing moment, and I think for some of the pastors here, because it wasn't long ago when we were standing up front there, and I'm pointing to Felix and others as well. We were the ones that were the students, and we were being paraded. I can still remember going up with a combi, up with Prof. Wittenberg, up to Transvaal and visiting all the congregations and sort of telling our story. And yeah, the question that I would like to actually ask is, are there other churches that are also experiencing a shortage of pastors and theology students, and especially we've got somebody from Norway and so forth, and you know, what can be the reason for this, that there is such a shortage?
I think yes, it's across the board, the mainline churches mainly, and I mean the question can be answered in different ways. One of them is, of course, that no longer does the pastor live in this sort of elevated position as the main guy in town, one of the few that could read and write, and it had this appeal of, you know, power and position. That was maybe one of the attraction points earlier. It's you know, a person that is sometimes even vilified in the media, most Netflix movies that show pastors show them as dunces that are really silly, not really necessary for society. So the image of what the pastor does has changed a lot. And I think that's maybe part of it. Maybe also youngsters are being told you need to find a calling that pays well, really well. Maybe that's part of the system, the problem. And then I must also say I have the impression, and this is now not as an answer to your question, but as maybe a little bit of a counter. Unfortunately, there are many people wanting to become ministers where I have the feeling, maybe not. Because they're precisely the ones that want to be, move back to that authoritarian, I know the truth and you have to swallow the truth. There's a lot of fundamentalism that comes to faculty, and there are quite a lot of issues with that as well. So it's actually quite a process of unlearning a lot of stuff that you come to faculty with. These ideas that everything is set in stone, and you have to completely, use this system of thought only, and don't, put on blinkers, and don't think out of the box at all. So I'm actually concerned with some people that come to university and want to become ministers. They go there, they go through the motions, and when they're back in the congregations, they're basically on that same level of fundamentalist faith that they were taught in their youth groups. And I find that a bit scary sometimes. There are congregations, students that come across the board. I must say the lecturers are quite impressed usually with our Lutheran students. They say two things. They know their Bible and they know their confessions, they know their catechism. But many of the other churches, and you ask the Dutch Reformed students in many cases, ask them, tell them about the Heidelberg Catechism, which is the equivalent of the small catechism of Martin Luther. And they haven't even got a clue that this thing exists. So that's a bit worrisome, I think, because what is going on there. We are actually, from the ecumenical board, I'm now the chairperson of the ecumenical board at the faculty. We are actually approaching the faculty and asking them to look at this situation. The knowledge that people come to university with about their church's tradition, their church's confessional writings, is atrocious. They have no clue. And this needs to be looked at also. In terms of recruiting people, because you don't want to perpetuate that problem. But anyway, that's going into the details there as well.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pastor, and thank you for the students. We wish you God's guidance in your studies, and Pastor Mylan, we wish you God's guidance in the great job you people are doing there in Stellenbosch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do the finance report straight away now. Welcome, Vernon. While he's busy there, Vernon is also a child from Augsburg, so he grew up with us here. Vernon, 2 minutes, please.
While Vernon is setting up, we can just all stand up and just stretch our legs and... Today it's supposed to be 30 degrees, tomorrow it's supposed to be 34 degrees.
Okay, while we're all standing, and sit down as you please, and if you make too much a noise, I'll shut you up. Huh? Firstly,
Vernon, just one question. Somehow one of the water bottles standing here at Anna's place went for a walk. Maybe somebody took the wrong bottle by mistake. If you find that you got the wrong bottle, you got Anna's name on your bottle, please bring it back. Thank you.
Just another thing, Vernon will explain about the questions. As he moves on, he's going to give time for questions. Thank you, Vernon. You on the...
Okay, first I'm going to take a bit of podium freedom, and I have to say something. Let me just log in. You know, as Heino said, I'm a child of Augsburg, and you know, I stand here in this room with pride, general fluffiness. You know, I feel lucky to be here. You know, I thought about this and I looked at those founding fathers of Augsburg, and something, you already saw that yesterday in Carsten's presentation, and something struck me. You know, 100 years sounds very long, but if you knew some of those guys, you know you're also old. Now, from the tall guy at the back, that's me and Bishop Fulter's granddad. And two places to his right, to our left, is Hugo's granddad, Uncle Jobs. So, you know, we knew those people, and it's really, this room has got many memories, you know. You see that cute guy at the bottom, that's me, you know. Yeah, you know, it's in... It's, I started my school education in that back room there where you get fed now. Gilbert was also part of a class, and I see one of our other classmates, Heinz, sits at the back. And then the authorities promptly decided to close the school when they saw us coming. But in any event, you know, this place, this room, I had my first dance here. I think somewhere here I had my first kiss. I can't remember really. I had my first beer out here, but it's really a nice place, and I would like to thank Augsburg for being my home. So our agenda today is we're going to look at the financial results 21-22. We have dealt with those. There was a full written report, which I hope you all read in the middle of the night, and I placed some mistakes in there by purpose to see if you read it. But we dealt with most of these issues at the pre-meetings. Then we're going to deal with the budgets for 24-25, and out of that comes the church law for 23, which is then the contributions and schedules and whatever. So for the questions, if it's a question on figures and tables and stuff like that, it's often, you know, ask it at the spot, stick up your hand and let's ask the question. If I know I'm going to deal with that question 2 slides forward, I'll tell you so. If I haven't, please ask again. My 6-year term of office has dashed past. You know, it feels like yesterday when we were in Hermannsburg, where I was elected. It was mostly fun, even the debates about the Solidarity Fund, the name of Solidarity Fund. And really the time I served the church council was and is still a personal enrichment for me. I got to know the church, and with it many brothers and sisters, which I think I would have never met, who really enriched my life. I would like to thank the church council. I had 2 sessions, you know, some other people left and new people came in, especially the finance committee for their support throughout the years. Bishop Miller, see he's left, there they stand. Don't you listen to me? Bishop Miller and Theo Jekyll and the office staff, Yolanda and Lisa Lotte, thanks for your support, hard work, and the patience you had with me. To all the congregational treasurers and admin personnel, a big thank you for all your hard work. Give yourself a clap. Achievements from 2020 to 22 is in 21 we were able to return 1 million rand to the congregations due to superior investment results. I think this must have been the first in the history of a church. Couldn't find any other case of that. The new arrangement with West Rand congregation, thanks to the congregation, arrears are now down to 0. We got the final payment this week, down from the 1.75 million in 2019. And this is really a success story. I would like to thank everybody that was involved. Where's the representative for West Rand? And I also have to say, Remo, thanks for all the effort you have put in. You really worked hard on that. We assisted with the renovation and the upgrading at the Kailager security. The properties at Kempton Park were sold to utilize the asset better. And the post-retirement medical liability is now being fully funded. And the investment is moved to a separate fund, and the church has now ceased to contribute for the arrears that we have. So hopefully, pastors don't get too old. Retired pastors, I mean. And investments, you're not retired yet, and investments keep on growing so that we keep funded on this. The planning of a new office at Nelxa, forced by a situation at the current location. The project was abandoned, and we spoke about that earlier, and we have now put that office, let's call it temporary, if it's the right word, at Witogie Street. And then we reduced, and still busy reducing the contents of the vault, and we're transferring the documents to the cloud as far as we can. Now we're looking at figures, numbers. So what you see here is the written report only had the 21 and the 22 column in it. I've added the 9 years actual year to date for 23. So you know where we stand now. And the blue bubble at the right top-hand side refers to the table in your written report if you get lost. So for 21, we had a very good year. As you can see, 1.7 million surplus in the investments. We also had savings in the church running cost, which was as a result of COVID, less traveling, all those kind of things. So we saved a little bit of money there. And then you can see at the bottom, we returned 1 million rand to the congregation. Each congregation got a piece of it. You see the 500,000 in and 500,000 out. So the church law prescribes that if a congregation closes, the remaining assets of that congregation fall to the church. We decided at church council that we don't want to just take these funds and hoard it. We transferred to the congregations who are closest to that, who take the people, and that's what happened in 21. Ermelo has, in all our minds, been closed a long time ago, but we realized it wasn't, so we did it in 21, and that 500,000 was transferred to Piet Retief. And for 22 and 23, it's the Morley congregation that has closed down, and we transfer those assets to the Winterton congregation, where basically the people have, or most of the people have found a home. In 22, we had negative investment return, but luckily in 23 that has reversed, and I'll say something more about that. So if you look at the bottom line, the loss of 22 has sort of been covered by the profit that we made in 2021. So on average, we like that frog with its in the oven. You know, we get half is cold and half is hot. The pastors in service. In 21, if you remember correct, we did not increase the pastors' salaries, but we also did not increase the contributions for pastors in service at the congregation. So the pastors, unfortunately, with COVID, had to take the bullet, and the congregations also did not pay an increased contribution at that time. But there are some costs like medical and whatever which increased, which is basically where that negative figure comes in 21. In 22, that sort of balanced out. And where we sit now in 23, we are running a surplus of 66,000. So it's all in balance. And if you remember correctly, we try to balance the budget to zero. So whatever we budget to spend, we collect back from the pastors in service. So just a reminder again, if you have any interim questions, please do ask. The church running costs in 21, the total cost 2.3 million, 2.4 million, which were lower than the budget because of the savings that we had there in the traveling costs. As you can see, the budget is much higher than the actual, and also in the office cost, and that was mainly because the budget included the cost of the new office in Johannesgemeinde, which we then didn't spend because we didn't build it. Then down at the bottom, the set-off income, the grant from the EKD is slightly higher, and that's due to the Euro-Rand exchange rate. Self-assessed contributions is lower than the budget, so we are under pressure there, but luckily it's picked up a little bit with the set-off with the EKD exchange rate. So there we ended up with a positive of 234. In 22, the costs started picking up. And just one interesting line item there, which is the admin fees from DSM. So Deutsche Seemannsmission, with Ron going there, we have an arrangement with a Deutsche Seemannsmission that we actually run the admin for them in South Africa. Otherwise, they have to form an NPO and all those kind of things. So at this point in time, between Yolanda and myself, we earn a little bit of money for the church, and the Germans pay for it. The prescribed offerings, just over years, from the left to the right, you can see there's a downward trend. In 2020, we had that green bubble, which is the COVID fund run, or COVID run that we had, and we still have some money left of that, and the church council don't know what to do with it. So if anybody has great ideas, please talk to me. It seems like in 2023 it might be picking up a little bit. I just have a few funds down here, which is where the offerings go, so that we just see where it goes. The church music started in 2019 at 288,000, and we are now at 595,000. So we give a lot for music, and it doesn't seem we spend as much. So Mark, as the music representative, the buck passes to you, huh? You first have to pass me. what was previously the Mission Fund, it's now called the MAD Fund, started at 1.9 million, and we are now at 2.7 million. So I'm glad that there's a new positiveness in the MAD team, and hopefully they find good ways to spend that money wisely and positively. Our worry is the theological education, and as you might know or remember, Pietermaritzburg closed down, and I think there wasn't really a purpose then for a long time at the congregations to actually have offerings for this cause, and the funds actually sort of came down, as you can see, 257 at the end of, or as it stands now. And with Felix being such an expensive person, we had to sort of pay more money towards UELXA for that training. So we have, in the budget, we have plans on how to bolster that. But this is just to demonstrate that it is actually run down, and I urge the congregations to actually support that cause. So here's the investment story of 2 years. So the red bars of what happened per month in 2022, and the red line is the cumulative. So what happened, we woke up in that year, 2022, and suddenly the international markets dropped. This was, by the way, before the Ukraine war. And there was 4 million rand, or basically 4 million rand that we lost on our investments. And suddenly I had to say to everybody, just be quiet, sit on your hands, and don't do anything rash at this point in time. The war happened in the next month, and now the questions were even more. What's going to happen now? But as you can see, that didn't do much, and we even recovered a bit, but we ended up the year with a loss of basically 4 million rand. Now, in the 23 year, we jumped with January, we jumped with 2 million rand, and we are now cumulatively 6 million positive. So it doesn't always work out like that, but it's if we had panicked in January 22 and sold off those assets that we own, we wouldn't have recovered the 6 million rand that we have now. So it is always a difficult thing, and I know you don't always get it right. We thank the Lord for helping us. And this is just also an investment slide which says over years. The dotted blue line is if I model what the cumulative returns would have been if we took that money and put it in a money market, which is not risk-free, but which is low risk. By 23, we would have earned 8.8 million. By putting it into mostly offshore assets and some money market assets, we have earned 14 million rand by the end of 23. So, you know, people always react to this red bar and say, oh, well, it's now over, you know, Armageddon has happened. So, as I always say to many of my friends, you know, don't panic. If you own good assets, they will recover over time. Obviously, we have a war again, so hopefully we all hold thumbs. The investment carry then for those years, 21, 6.2 million we made. We allocated 470 to the funds. We allocated 3 million to the medical liability, and then to the Hermannsburg Schule Pastor Fund we allocated 800,000. In 22 that obviously reversed, I already showed you that earlier. And in 23 we've got the positive story again. This is just a balance sheet, just a highlight. You see in 21, now suddenly I start working from the right to the left, so I apologize for that. the investments in 21 was 45 million. In 22, 42 million, and that was basically the money that was lost in the investment at the time. Sorry. The NELCSA medical provision for pensioners. The third line from the bottom, which is the shortage or the surplus, as calculated with an actuarial formula. We put in the pensioners at a terminal age of 84, so if you get close, be careful. The investments, we then budget on the basis, conservative investment. So at the end of 22, there was a 306,000 negative carry, but that has returned back to positive in the following year. These are just the accounts provisions at the end of 21 and 22. As you can see, provisions for transfers, that is if pastors move from one place to the others. We've got quite a bit of money in there, but costs are also getting up, and that's basically it. And there's the suspense solidarity run of 170,000. So anybody with good ideas, come and speak to me. We'll talk about it. Accounts receivable, I don't show this for a name and shame reason. I think it's important that the church, the congregation knows where the money is owed. In 21, the Central Circuit owed 1.9 million. It's down to 1.3 million, and that's mostly Westrand. At the end of 22, they were still outstanding 547,000. But there also is Kempton Park, which is a big number, and also East Rand, which is a number that has been there for some time. This Eastern Circuit, thanks guys, you are in credit. Northern Circuit, St. Peter's, Pretoria, battles a bit. We are also, I think that 1.5 post has now been reduced to 1.25 post, so hopefully that will assist a bit. The Southern Circuit, also in good shape. And then there are the let's call it the non-congregations things. I must say, last month, for the first time since I have started looking at this, the total outstanding accounts receivable were under R1 million. So thanks for everybody for that. Just the story, we spoke about it earlier. For those who weren't here, in 2019, we put forward to the Synod a conditional write-down of Westrand, where for every 10,000 Rand that they pay on the old debt, we would actually write off 4,500, which is basically 45%. And that would have been basically the interest that we have over time accumulated. It was a very emotional thing, but I think as we stand here today, it was a good thing that we did, and I thank everybody for supporting that. I think the congregation grabbed it, and it's really a very good success story. I just want to show what we've written down over the years is that 471 and then that 57,000. So what is that? 530,000 was written down, and the balance was actually paid in cash. So thanks again, guys. This is just prescribed offerings. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. There's the graph that we've shown, and you can see it is tapering down over time, difficult times, and so we just have to watch this, and hopefully the offerings come in at the right places. Okay, that's that part. I just want to do quickly one write down ratifications. So in between, Or perhaps I must just, sorry, can I just pause here for a minute? Any questions up until now, comments or whatever? Hugo?
I tried to read through the account. The question I've got, percentage-wise, how much is overseas or unit trust investments from the reserves of the church, and how much is it in the normal fashion, or is it difficult to?
I'm going to take a FAMSAC figure. I can go and calculate it and give it to you later. But I would say about 55% is invested in good offshore assets.
Okay.
And the balance is actually in money market in South Africa and a little bit in South African bonds and whatever.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Hugo.
Just to offer some.
Yeah. Co-worker training. I saw that in 2021 the budget was 100,000, and obviously due to COVID we didn't use any of that. And 2022 was 75,000. And 2023 so far 12,000 was used. I can't find the figure what the budget was actually for 2023. For me, it's important that we don't reduce that amount too much, because more and more congregations are struggling, and we should rather encourage the lay people to do training and make it attractive for them to do training and keep that amount at 100,000, that we can somehow get the lay people to do more training for the congregations.
Yeah, I think that's important. Out of a budget point of view, I think for 23 the budget is actually 106 or so. But, you know, I can't spend the money if you don't want to spend the money. So, okay, nothing at...
No further questions? Thank you, Vernon.
Okay, so between synods, the Church Council must take certain operational and executive decisions which cannot wait until the next session. These are then ratified by Synod at the next session. One of these is to deal with outstanding debt of congregations. Church Council discusses outstanding debt and specific situations in congregations with the congregational councils, has to decide on repayment arrangements, and in some cases offer encouragement by the way of an interest holiday or a write-down. In the past 2 years, two congregations fall into this category. Kempton Park and East Rand. My slides are just swapped around. So I just want to talk about these quickly. Kempton Park, the Church Council has agreed on a conditional write-down here after the pastor Wexel, I don't know what the English word is. Somebody tell me. Change. And during COVID, Kempton Park congregation experienced difficult financial times. In December 22, the pastor's post was vacated. At that time, the outstanding debt was 485,000 rand. New energy was needed in the congregation, and the proposal was put forward for a conditional write-down of 12.5% of what they pay, which is effectively 11% of the outstanding debt, of payments made to the outstanding debt, and an interest holiday. So we also stopped charging interest. The congregation will hopefully, or they should then be able on estimates to pay this down by December 2024. In practice or in real life, they've actually slightly ahead already. The congregation will hopefully then be able to afford a pastor again. The current outstanding debt is 252, so they have actually paid down to that quite substantially. So the Church Council is seeking to ratify this decision, for Synod to ratify our decision.
Thank you, Vernon. Any questions about this rectifying?
There's Carl, who's the representative of Kempton Park. He wants to say something.
You just mentioned that after the end of 24, we will be able to afford a pastor again. I don't think that will be true, because then we are just square one, and then with the amount we pay for a pastor, a full-time pastor, a month, we cannot get the contributions and donations and fundraising together to pay for the pastor full-time. So it will start to happen again that we have got more outstanding debts than we have got income. So personally, I can't see that we can afford a pastor from 25 onwards, a full-time pastor.
Okay, but it's our hope and pray that we do. So let's double-cross that bridge if we get there, Carl.
Yeah, we hope as well, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you. Now we must vote. Council seeks to rectify this decision. We should vote. Anybody against this ratification? Nobody? Abstentions? In favor? We accept everybody. Oh, okay. 2 abstentions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vernon.
Okay, thank you. The East Rand Lutheran congregation. This congregation has been without a pastor for many years. In 2019, the pastor post was filled by Pastor Molchine. During that time, the outstanding debt increased because they couldn't really afford the pastor cost. At the end of 2020, the debt has grown up to 340,000. East Rand is also a congregation with multiple properties, which is where we think where some of these issues might come from, because to maintain properties is expensive. The church council then encouraged the congregation to sell some of these properties, which is an emotional thing. You have to jump over your own shadow to do that. But we also arranged with them that, that if they pay down 5,000 Rand a month to the old debt, we will stop charging interest, which is they have actually stuck to that arrangement, honored it over time. The current outstanding debt is 252,000. The Heidelberg property has now been sold for 700,000. The money is not in the bank yet, and the congregation's main property in Germiston is in dire needs of renovation. The congregation has requested the church council to grant a 20% write-down when the amount is paid. The current outstanding is 252,000. In light of the congregation having enjoyed the interest holiday over time since 2018, the church council proposes a 45,000 Rand flat write-down, conditional write-down, which equals around 15%. So don't ask me how we arrived at the 15%. It just sounded good. Okay, so we are also seeking ratification for this decision.
Thank you, Vernon. Any questions? Thank you. Then you can vote. Anyone against the ratification? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you.
You must get the green stuck up as well.
Oh, okay.
Anybody for?
Anybody for, yeah.
Thank you. So now it's time to say goodbye and to say welcome. You know, Yolanda has been for us, with us since 2010. Yolanda luister jy? So Yolanda has now decided to finally retire. I think she and her husband are moving to the Cape. Up here it's too dry apparently, I don't know. So Yolanda, kom vorentoe asseblief. Yolanda, thanks for all the time you spent with us. I met you in 2016, I think, for the first time. And we really worked well together. Thanks for all the time and effort. I was able to phone you late at night and sort things out and whatever, and all the assistance you gave me, and the church council, and everybody out in the congregations. You know, if there's something wrong with her account, she had to sort it out. So we will miss you, and have a good retirement. Yeah. You can't eat this tonight. You're going to have enough food in this place. You can eat it at home.
I will, thank you.
Do you want to say something?
Yes, I want to say thank you to each and everybody that's here. When I started the first synod in 2010, I was very, very scared because I didn't know the people, I couldn't pronounce the names, and still I don't know who you all are, but you are my family. Thank you very much. And then I also want to thank Lieselotte and Horst and Theo that I worked with. It was really 13 and a half years of joy. And then to Vernon, I want to say thank you very much, Vernon. You have taught me a lot, and I will never forget you. Thank you.
And then we also have to say welcome to Katarina Eldring, who's the person replacing Yolanda. Katarina, where are you? I see your photo up there. Ah, so is she. Katarina is a Swedish person. She's going to address you in Swedish now. I hope your Swedish is... But Katarina, welcome, and we hope we're going to have a very fruitful time together. And welcome to the church. You're not in employment yet, but you've actually joined the synod, and thank you for that, so you can get the ropes. For those people who are from around here, her husband is Tante Rona Eldring's son, Carl Eldring. You might still remember him. Okay, so Mr. President, I think we can still do the budget. We are a bit behind on time, but I think we're going to catch up. Yes.
Sorry, I think we must just welcome Katarina.
Oh, okay, sorry. You know, that's why Petra is a pastor and I'm a finance minister.
Okay. Yeah, Vernon, carry on.
Okay, same story here. If you've got questions, stick up your hand. We'll answer that. This is the picture that hopefully you've all seen, the various sources of expenses and the various sources of income. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The two big blocks, pastors in service, which we collect or attempt to collect 100% from the pastors that are employed at the congregations. And then the church running cost, which is the sort of central cost to run the church and whatever. And then on the left-hand side, the net, the investment incomes. This is the pastors in service. This year, it's based on the salary scale that we, Synod some time ago, took a decision we're going to hang our hat on the Dutch Reformed Church Study Commission, or whatever they call themselves, Salary Commission, on this basis. And we base the budget actually on the highest scale. Now I think we've got one pastor or two pastors, not on a maximum scale, because all our pastors are old. There's one other advantage. I was able to this year reduce the child allowance, to decrease the child allowance by 38%, because those old guys don't have children anymore, you know, so that helps a bit. The medical cost was also reset to actual. So what has happened, remember we contribute either 50 or 60% of the medical premium on a monthly basis. So we've encouraged pastors to go to lower plans, which is cheaper for them and cheaper for us. But also over time with less dependents, less children or whatever, this actual average has actually come down, and I was able to reduce that in the budget as well. The theological education, we added a cost to the pastors in service to fund education at the expense of Felix. At the new ULXA, I still have it as a tutor post. I don't know why I've got a different Felix. But it's important, I think, that the congregations who currently have pastors actually contribute to this so that we can have new pastors in the system and grow that support on the basis. There's pastors' conferences and continuing professional development. And then the pastor's housing, transport and communication is budgeted and paid for by the congregation. So we as the central church finances don't have that. So the pastor costs what you pay the salary and obviously the rest of it, and it's different for each congregation. So here's the summary, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Total cost... cost to company before related costs in 24, 671,000 for the year, which is a 3.5% increase. And in the next year, we have used a 7% increase because of the higher inflation. We felt let's rather go with 7% and not 6% because we've sensed the Dutch Reformed Church might go slightly higher. So please, Ron, don't go and spend that money yet. You know, don't have it yet. Then you see the theological education. So that 250,000 that we put in there works out to be 11,626 per congregation per year. So that's what's added in there. And that's how it's made up. Don't see any questions, and this is just without the detailed summary. I think the important thing is that the graph at the bottom over time, those were the salary increases that were actually put through. As you can see, 2021, it was flat, and if you think about it, we are now in 23, and we are basically at the budget of 21. So that's what the pastors gave up at that point in time, and what COVID did at the process. So that's over time how the increases are budgeted for. This is the recovery. I show the 23 budget and the 24 and 25 budget, and as you can see here, it is actually budgeted to be recovered fully. And that's just the summary of a detail. You see a line item there, vacancy adjustments. So we do, if there's a congregation which is supposed to have a pastor, we budget for the pastor in service. But if there's a vacation, we deduct that. If there's a vacancy, we adjust it. It's a negative. This is the Pastors in Service Theological Education Fund. So this is basically how I projected going forward. The opening balance at the beginning of 24, 300,000. Compulsory offerings, we hope picks up a little bit. The MAD team has also agreed to reduce the offerings from 12, the compulsory offerings from 12 to 10 for the MAD team, and increase the offerings to the educational fund by 2 compulsory offerings. So that will hopefully also boost it. Theologically, what did I say? Sorry. I apologize, Ryan. And then the 250,000 is what we basically provided then in the cost to pass this, which should bolster this fund. And that 469 and 502 is basically our portion of the education cost, not only Felix cost, but all the costs at UELCSA at Stellenbosch. Okay. You must stop me if you've got questions. Medical liability, just projecting this forward, so very conservative projection in terms of investment returns, which hopefully will keep the short or the surplus still going. And then here's the NELCSA or the church running cost. The new ELCSA office at reduced cost. So at the Johannesgemeinde, remember the plan was to build an office and to then write off the cost over 20 years. Here we've got a much cheaper option, which cost us less than that write-off. So that's why there's a reduction. There's also a virtual office, which helps. Co-worker training, we still got in there. Pastors transfer stayed the same as the previous year, because we've got quite some money in there. And I've budgeted for a reduced self-assessment contribution because I sense it's starting to get... Dit begin taai word, soos ons in Afrikaans sal sê. I'm not really going to go through a lot of this. If you see the cost of the bishop, it's not his salary, that's not his salary, it's the congregations pay for the housing and the vehicle and all that sort of stuff. So the bishop's cost is actually all that stuff included. Don't think there's really anything here, just perhaps to say that the EKD funding of 81,000 euros is still going on. There's always this threat that they might not help us going forward, but I think that has sort of gone away. When they visited some years ago, there was a very positive vibe when they actually left. The church running costs, I'm not going to go with this detail, this is the summary. Bishop's cost, that's the cost of a bishop, his housing and whatever, the traveling and accommodation. This is now the traveling for the church council, the bishop and whatever. So the church council getting together. We have also a church council taken a decision this year, perhaps I can just share that every second church council meeting we actually want to hold in a congregation, so that you can, the congregants can actually meet us and we can meet them. We had our first one in July, in the coldest day in July in Piet Retief. It was freezing, but it was a very successful meeting, I think. You know, the congregants got to meet us, we got to meet them, and it's really a process that I think we should embrace. The cost might be different slightly, but I think it's a very positive thing that we've done. And as you can see there, the percentage increase is 2.8% over the 23 budget that we budgeted there, and then 6.2% the year after. And then the net at the bottom, I always get asked this question, 3.3% increase, right at the bottom, 32,000 Rand for each congregation. And then it suddenly jumps to 18%. That's just a mathematical some, because the set of income, the self-assessed contribution is reduced, but the costs go up. So you just get the net is just a mathematical increase. So it's not an error. Net church running costs. This is always the debate for self-assessed contributions. As you can see, if we had no self-assessed contributions, each congregation would have had to contribute in 24, 59,000 and 63,000 in 25. But because we have self-assessed contributions, that is actually lowered to 32 and 38. And the logic again is more affluent congregations, the more they contribute, they assist lesser affluent congregations. And, if lesser affluent congregations close down, you've got less to divide the costs into, and they will over time just increase. So that's the whole logic. In 24 and 25, you will receive an invoice. If you have a pastor of 58,000 and a 2,702 rand for the church running costs, and hopefully you pay it. And then your benchmark or your hurdle rate for self-assessment is then the 26,950. So that means if you self-contribute or self-assess less than that, there's somebody else subsidizing you. If you contribute more than that, you are assisting somebody else. This is the investment part. Perhaps I must just stick here. I've increased the interest yield because interest rates have generally increased now, and they will probably stay a bit higher. The dividend yield and the capital growth I've reduced, it gives us these returns here, and we will still then be able to replenish the medical fund and also the Hermansboy School Pastor Fund. Just for interest's sake, while I think about the number, 6 years ago, when the whole thing with the farm selling or whatever in Hermansboy happened, we took 5 million rand and put it in the Hermansboy School Pastor Fund because we are funding that half post. Today that fund is still 5 million rand, so we were able to keep it very stable. We use the money to pay for the cost, and the fund is still available. That picture you've seen, and hopefully if the investments go forward, that green dotted line, that's how we see it going up in the next 2 years. So, and this is the summary income statement. I've shown the 21 and 22 actual and then the year to date for 9 months. And going forward, obviously the zero balances in cost to pastors, pastors in service and church running costs, and then what remains over of a surplus of the investments gives us that number. The increase to the congregation, just in a graphical format, as you can see, the blue one in the middle was what we budgeted for 21. We reset it in 21 at 0. And then in 22, we reduced it. And 23 was 24, 6.1 and 6.3. So that's how the numbers actually come out. Now, perhaps I must just stand here and ask for questions. So did I confuse you enough so that you don't have questions?
Thank you, Vernon.
The figures that we were sent have been updated. Can we please receive the updated figures?
I can send you the slideshow, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Vernon.
No, hang on, I'm not done yet.
Oh.
Okay. This all leads us to Church Law 1, Schedule 1, which is, when, in summary, everything that I told you now. So what you are approving is actually this sheet, which is Church Law 1, which is the financial contributions by the congregations. Is that budget 16.8, 17.9, and it's broken up into those categories. And then the self-assessed contributions is obviously also included in that. And then this is the cost, and that leaves us with the surpluses budgeted at the bottom, and the true and false at the bottom is just to make sure that my Excel spreadsheet balances. So we need to approve this, Mr. Chair.
We need to approve first the financial report, then the budget, then the church law.
Yeah, we jumped that,
Yeah.
Should I deal with Section 74.1 as well, then we can do all. So this is the changes in the prescribed offerings. As I said before, the Ministry of Discipleship, the MAD team, offered up. They offered 2 offerings. And we added them to theological education. And then we also changed the name for solidarity to self-assessed contribution, because that was the name we decided at last synod we're going to name it. And then for the 10% congregations who do their offerings at the altar, this is, if you send your 10% to us, this is how we will actually allocate it.
Thank you, Vernon. Any more questions? Thank you. Then we can do the vote. We start with the financial report. Anybody against? The red cards, please. Nobody?
The financial report has to be proposed and it has to be seconded. Is there somebody to propose?
There's Dieter. Seconder. There's somebody there. Thank you. Dieter Kuzel. Cassie Hense. Carsten Hense. Okay. Thank you. Now we can vote. Anybody against the financial report?
Sorry, I just have a question. Is it right that you took Nicart is on church council, so you can't Ron Kuzel there?
He's running the show, not me.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Ron Kuzel. Okay. Thank you. Right. Let's start again. The no's. Anybody red cards? Any abstentions? Eight abstentions. 8. In favor? By far. Thank you. Then we must accept the Church Law 1.
Just trying to get to it.
Can I just say something, please?
Yeah.
Can I ask, please, that where you're changing the offerings that were previously Solidarity Fund to self-assessed, it was decided at last synod that it would be self-assessed NELXA contribution, so as to be quite clear that it is the contribution that we make to the church, and not confuse that in any way. So please, can we add that NELXA at the self-assessed offering there?
Thanks. I thought I had the words sorted out, but obviously not. But you're right. I'm more a figures man than a words man.
That's why there are other people.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Microphone.
On pastel, it just gives you a certain space. So there's not always space to put in the whole heading that you just said now. So
Yeah,
I will try and get everything in there, but it doesn't.
Yolanda is referring now to the invoicing system, but we don't invoice for that. But this year we will change.
Thank you, Yolanda. Now we're going over to the budget. Any proposer? You can accept it. Thank you. Your name, please.
Elizabeth Rommelsbacher and Elke Karel.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody against the budget? Abstentions?
Oh, you abstaining? No, you are abstaining. Yeah, 12. 12 abstentions.
Thank you. The final one will be the church law. Oh, okay. Everybody else accepted. Thank you.
He normally passes through an orange robot in any event. He never goes through it.
Thank you, Vernon. Church law 1, a proposer, please. Thank you.
Konrad Hartmann.
Seconder. Ben Klingender. Okay. Okay, go over to the vote. Any objections? Abstentions? In favor? Thank you. Thank you, Vernon. Yeah, and
No, you've still got to do this one.
Yes.
With the changed wording, self-assessed NELXA contribution. Udo is shaking his head. We thought we had killed this.
Is that not part of Church Law 1? This is part of Church Law 1. Yeah. This is part of Church
I don't know,
Law.
then it's fine. Then we
Part of
don't
Church
have to.
Law 1.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Vernon, and for all your hard work, and Church Council as well.
Just a big word of thanks to Vernon. He's put his heart and soul into this. His term has come to an end, but there will be election time. Vernon, thank you so much for all you've done, the time that you've spent, and including many hours with congregations that had maybe had issues. You've done a great job, and we appreciate that very much.
Rainer?
Am I on? Sorry, yes. On Sunday, the offering will be for theological education, so that just people know in advance. Thank you.
Just some announcements. We about 20 minutes behind schedule. I'm very confident that we'll catch that up in the last session today, which is hopefully going to be a very short session. My proposal is now to have a half an hour break. We had a very long session. So at 4:20, we will continue here. We will then run through to 1900 hours. Ryan, if you can arrange with the kitchen that we'll have dinner half an hour later for 45 minutes. And then the evening session is going to be a bit shorter, but I'm very confident that we'll catch up